AM 790 Talk and Business presents The Coalition, a weekly one-hour show that looks at all sides of local, regional, and national news, as well as current events. Join us now for The Coalition.
And we are live on AM 790, The Coalition Talk Radio. You can find us on Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, what we now call the Twitter hate line at PO Taxpayer. That's P, the letter O, Taxpayer. We are outrage porn free. We are issues driven. And today we've got a packed lineup, so we're pretty much going to get right to it. In studio and on the phone today, we've got Mike Riley. He'll be in with a few minutes for our weekly segment of Just How Screwed Are We? Calling in from California, we are honored to have Judge Jim Gray. He'll be speaking about libertarian politics, but most importantly focused on the legalization and regulation of marijuana in the United States. And in studio, we have Jared Moffett from Regulate Rhode Island. Jared, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here.
It's going to be... At the end, if we can get him in here in time, we're going to have John Nowicki from the Rhode Island Tea Party. He's going to talk about Rhode Island Roadmap. So we're going to go right to it. The quick question, Justin, I called you Justin. I'm sorry, Jared. Live radio. Quick question, Jared. Thoughts on the election?
Yeah, statewide, or do you... I think it's basically, in Rhode Island, it's the sweep, of Democrats, I think in some ways is good for us on our issue. But, nationally seeing the Republicans take over is probably not a great thing for our issue. But it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with the Washington, D.C. vote. It was 70% voted in favor of removing all penalties for cultivating your own marijuana at home for adults and possessing up to 2 ounces. So it'll be interesting to see how Congress, do they allow that to stand? Do they try to challenge it? It's going to be interesting to see sort of the Rand Paul wing, see if they stand up to the establishment Republicans who have kind of been beating the drums about trying to reverse this. So
the Rand Paul wing, yeah, it's we're going to focus a little later on the show on the continuing battle between ideological Republicans who allegedly stand for Main Street but really stand for Wall Street, and then the true patriots in this nation. A little bit of self-interest here because we are going to be espousing overtly libertarian causes in the coming months. How it actually works between those two wings, because there are many of us who are convinced at this point in history going forward, that the true path to self-righteousness, right, is through not only the establishment of a libertarian party, say, for example, here in Rhode Island, where we've got a really good core, we've got a good core group, but really taking it to the next level, but really seeing that as a potential replacement second party here in Rhode Island and really across the nation. Republicans only have to look to their own history. Ultimately, at one point, they were a third party. So we'll see how that goes. A couple of housekeeping issues here. The coming shows in the coming weeks. We're going to be focusing heavily on Roadmap Rhode Island. We will be doing a Thanksgiving show ostensibly next weekend where we're going to highlight one of the really important portions and sometimes unnoticed moments in libertarian, which is called voluntarism, where we're going to celebrate people in the community who actually do things not for self-aggrandizement, not for personal gain, but they do them quietly because it's the right thing to do. So that's going to be the focus. As I mentioned, we're going to be going forward, and we're going to really, focus extensively on libertarian issues. It's a difficult road to hoe, particularly in Rhode Island. In the coming weeks, we're going to have folks from the Massachusetts Libertarian Party, and have them in to talk about some of their successes and some of the challenges they face in Massachusetts. It'll be interesting to see how far we can go, given the third-party climate that was really advanced by the Cool Moose this time around. What's your thoughts about a third party here in Rhode Island?
I would definitely welcome it. I mean, personally, I think that we need more diversity. I think we need someone to be challenging the two parties that exist. I mean, but here in Rhode Island, challenging the Democratic establishment could only be a good thing. I think there's too much loyalty to the Democrats, and to be healthy, I think you need to have sort of more diverse perspectives on the table. I think that just benefits the whole state. So I'd certainly like to see a third party here in Rhode Island, and as well as nationally. I think it would be a positive effect.
Do you see the progressive Democrats really and then I don't want to put you on the spot or ask you to divulge the secrets of some of what your friends are talking about in the back rooms, if you will, the smoky-filled back rooms of Rhode Island progressive Democrats. But do you see themselves asserting or becoming more independent from the mainstream Democratic Party here in the state?
I think it's always a tough decision for the progressive Democrats, because I think that on the one hand they know that in order to be effective they have to operate through the established party. So I think it's probably unlikely that they would try to break off and form their own party. I think it's always for them a struggle to move the party as a whole ideologically towards more closer to their stances. So I think that they're not going to break with the party. I think they're going to try to change from within.
It's tricky because libertarians have had very much a similar role in the Republican movement in this country. We've always been sort of taken for granted, to be blunt. We were always, patronized during the run-ups and primaries, run up to the general election. But ultimately, there was a coronation process that took sort of the mainstream, I'll call them Mitt Romney style, Bob Dole style Republican, and we were told, next time we'll keep working with you, and then they'd ignore any of the party platforms that we suggested. I see an analogy there between there and progressive Democrats. So a lot of us have given up on the Republican Party. We're intrigued by what's going to happen to Rand Paul. We're not very optimistic. I mean, if Rand Paul were to suddenly get the nomination, we'd probably look up and say, okay, let's talk. We were already hearing the stirrings of the nomination of the next Bushy, which is just appalling on a fundamental human level.
Yeah.
I think to both of us.
Right.
Listen, it's at this moment in the show every few weeks where we have a very special guest on, and he is an established member of the libertarian movement here in the state. He's a member of the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity. He brings to us a certain gravitas and a maturity here to the coalition that, frankly, is difficult for us to deal with because he's a numbers guy, but at the same time has a fundamental understanding of how people work with markets. So it's with great pride and joy that we bring you this month's edition of Mike Riley and How Screwed Are We? Mike, are you out there?
I am. How are you?
Mike, so I'm sitting with my Wheaties in the middle of the night on the web doing what libertarian trolls like me do, which is trying to figure out ways to antagonize members of the political ruling elite here, particularly post-election. And there's such a troll-rich environment here in Rhode Island. There's just so many people that you can harass. And across my feed comes the notion from Mike Riley himself of a new tax. And I almost fell off my chair and when he called it a wealth tax. So, Mike, please tell me. And you explained it to me pretty well. Yeah. But give us a little background. I think it was a great idea. Mike, it's fabulous. I mean, it's rich in irony and cynicism and practicality. It's everything that you and I share and love.
Yeah. Well, that's what it is. I mean, first of all, let's recognize that we have a problem. We have a $3 billion liability to the retirees, the public workers of the city of Providence. So I say we. I do own property in Providence, but I'm saying that Providence has that liability. But the very scary and real part of this is Providence is playing the game, and the General Assembly is going along with it, that this isn't their liability at all, that the rest of the state is who's going to pay for this $3 billion hole. And the way they've done that is over a period of time. In 2011, they passed a law saying that bondholders would receive first lien on taxes. So bondholders are basically indemnified against the bankruptcy of a municipality in Rhode Island. That's very different than what just happened in Detroit, where in Detroit, bondholders got 20 cents on the dollar. That can't happen here, and that's courtesy of your General Assembly. Second, the $3 billion that is owed by the city of Providence, their taxpayers are already up to their chin. They've already paid the top taxes in the nation, and so tax relief in the form of regular property tax increases aren't going to cut it. The numbers just don't work. Third, retirees. Retirees aren't going to end up paying for this because we just went through a round where Mayor Taveras had reform effort, and it cut about $170 million off the 3-point-whatever billion in liability. They're not going through that again. They're not going through it soon with Merrill Orza. There is another way of getting out of this, and that is filing for receivership. And receivership is basically like a prepackaged bankruptcy where all the parties get together and negotiate. Given that the bondholders already have indemnification, they're not going to get involved. Given that the retirees just recently in Detroit were recompensated with 95% of what they had before, and given, again, our General Assembly's recent vote to give another $6 million to Central Falls, making a 75% replacement on their retirement, we have established that state taxpayers will pay at least 75% of the debt. So I'm suggesting that if the winners of the election, which are largely progressive, really believe in what they say, that the wealth tax in Providence should be the one that pays for the promises that were made by who they voted for in Providence. No state taxpayer should have to pay these debts.
I couldn't agree more. You know, this past election, there was ultimately a successful attempt, I should say successful completion, by the new Democratic Party in Providence, which is actually in excess of 12 years old now, to whitewash an entire generation of mismanagement, misappropriation, malfeasance, and incompetence, and just sometimes downright stupidity and greed that occurred during the 8 years of the Cicilline and the last 4 years of the Tavares campaign. It's almost as if that those 12 years didn't exist, and somehow that this is all buddy. Now, you can go back and forth between just whose fault is it. There's plenty of blame to go around statewide. But the notion that somehow this happened while Providence taxpayers were blind and didn't know is incredible at best. Certainly, at some point, Providence taxpayers, and there's a significant wealth economy out there in Providence. Despite Providence's repeated efforts to portray themselves as this bastion of poverty, one need only drive down to the Tony East Side to Blackstone Boulevard after having an ice cream at Three Sisters and maybe stopping by Starbucks or any one of the number of high-end coffee establishments on the East Side to understand that there's a whole hell of a lot of money there to pay the bills. So, and they, as they would say in the vernacular and the street, because I'm a street guy, they have the skills to pay the bills, right?
Absolutely. And listen, it makes my skin crawl to propose a tax anytime.
I'm pretty hard to shock, but you blew me away on this one, boss.
Yeah, and I do have to, I am getting significant pushback from my friends on my side of the aisle and from the own Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity, where they believe in lower and even eliminated taxes. But I don't see any other way out in Providence without taxing the state taxpayers. And I actually think that's the plan, and that's been a plan for a long time. Look, there is no way out. These retirees are actually due what they were promised. But I didn't make the promise. The people in Providence made that promise, and they've got to pay for it.
No, and that's just it. And we saw the shall we say, the harbinger of things to come when the legislature essentially backdated the contracts and essentially ignored bankruptcy law by allowing the state to pony up for the people in CF. I mean, and CF is a microcosm, was really a mini-me of Providence.
Well, absolutely, and it establishes precedent. I mean, this is all part of the game plan. And so what we really have to do as non-Providence citizens is make very clear what our stance is on this and make the new entries, the new governor, Raimondo, clear that state taxpayers are not bailing out Providence. We have to make that clear. We have to make her comment on it.
Right. And in closing, I mean, I missed the episode where folks on the East Side chained themselves to Providence City Hall and said, no more waste, no more misappropriation. Quite frankly, the folks on the East Side have been more concerned about what's going on in Darfur and any one of a number of liberal causes than they have about what's going on at City Hall, because ultimately, between aid to cities in town, between the federales, between all these individual groups of other taxpayers, other people have been paying the bill in Providence for a couple of generations. And it's institutionalized poverty at this point, both in the